Hello guys, today we're going to be doing a video on Star Wars The Fallen Order using the Steam Deck. We're going to be playing the game at native resolution of 800p, and we're going to be starting it off with the lowest preset, which is the medium preset. And as always, if you like what you see, a sub to the channel will be highly appreciated as well. Alright, let's jump into it. Alright, starting it off with the medium preset. The game's running quite well. We're getting 40 FPS around there. We are getting some stutters here and there, but I do remember this game having stuttering issues when it came out, so I don't know if they fixed that or if it's still the same. I haven't tried this game out recently, but either way, you will get some stutters here and there for the Steam Deck. Now, if I want to record for a video, I normally install my games off an external SSD and play it off that. But this game, it just wouldn't work. It does install, and it does install Origin as well. But as soon as you start the game up and start up Origin, it will just crash. So this game, I don't think can be installed off an external SSD. The SD card is probably fine as well, but right here we're running it off the internal SSD of the Steam Deck. Now looking at the actual overlay, we can see that one core is fully maxed out and the rest are sitting at 50%, 60%, which is not a good sign. It's mainly using up just one or two cores, and we're pulling 28 watts like you would expect. Normally when you uncap the FPS, you will be using up all the power that is available to the Steam Deck, which will leave you with an hour and a half of battery life. Now I did spend some time playing around with the settings off camera just to see what I could come up with. And there's definitely some ways to bring the power draw down. We are sitting at 40 FPS, which means even though we're playing at the lowest settings at 100p, we are maxing at around 40 FPS, so it doesn't leave us with much room to play with. So even though 40 Hz, 40 FPS is viable, it's probably best to play at 60 Hz with 30 FPS. But I'll be testing all these out at the end of the video as well. Now I just tried increasing the GPU clocks manually, and what that does is it doesn't affect our FPS at all. It actually decreases the FPS, since it takes away the power that's allocated to the CPU, which brings the CPU clocks down, which makes us more CPU bottleneck. Alright, let's go ahead and increase the settings up to high now. Second preset. Looking good. Alright, let's continue with the high preset now. FPS seems to be doing about the same, a little bit higher actually I think, than the medium preset. Now at this point I wouldn't be surprised if we do fall into the 30s more easily. And also it's kind of hard to see the improvements playing on high settings. The game already looks amazing on the medium preset, and since we're playing on a smaller screen, it's kind of hard to spot these small details. Now we are in a smaller zone, I guess. This isn't the open world that you normally explore. This is the intro level, and it's very linear, so FPS might be higher than normal, I guess. But so that's why I'm saying that you might have some dips into the 30s with the high preset. Now one thing that I forgot to mention is that I am using the old fan curve here. Normally I use the new fan curve. That's what Steam uses by default. But in this game it was just getting too hot. The CPU would easily spike up to 90 degrees, which is it's a little too hot at that point. We are still getting somewhat close to 90 degrees, but we normally sit around 85 degrees when it's on the low. Talking about the performance of this preset, it runs pretty smooth. Didn't really stutter too much, or at all actually. And yeah, it runs really good. The issue that we're having here is the temperature and the power draw. We're using up 28 watts, so you don't get too much playtime if you're not already plugged in or using a power bank. Alright, let's go and push up to our final preset, the Epic preset. Alright, playing at the Epic preset now. This preset I would say is our 30 FPS preset. It looks the best, and we might fall into the 20s, I would imagine, on those intensive scenes. But normally you're going to be sitting around 30 to 35 FPS with this, which is still really good. I guess we could always use FSR to drop the resolution down and give ourselves some extra GPU headroom. But I would also drop the draw distance down, since that's very intensive as well. Same with the shadows. Those two you don't really need, and it just uses up too much power and resources. So far the FPS range between 30 to 45, depending on the scene that we're in and what's happening on the screen. Well, we just had a massive dip into the 20s there. Like I said before, we're going to have a higher chance of having dips into the 20s playing at epic settings. So I would go ahead and actually cap the FPS 30 at this point, just to have the most consistent frame rate and frame time. Alright, this is where the fun begins. We're playing on the lowest preset, the medium preset again, native resolution, and we are playing with a 30 FPS cap, just to see how much power we draw and see what our headrooms are. Obviously we can hold a steady 30 with this. Shouldn't be a problem at all since we held around 40 to 45 FPS normally. But this should give us some extra battery life and a more consistent experience as well. CPU is still fully maxed out. Well, not the whole thing, but CPU core 3 is fully maxed out and the rest is chilling at 40% to 30%. GPU is sitting around 70%, which is pretty decent. GPU clocks are way down at 700 MHz instead of 1.3 GHz as well. But we still have a long way until we're fully optimized and we actually have a portable experience with this. And I say that because even though we capped at 30 FPS in the lowest settings, we're still pulling 25 watts. So you won't be getting a lot of playtime if you're playing portably without an external power source. Playing with 40 Hz, 40 FPS now, as you can see, we should go back to what we had before. 28 watts and should have a consistent 40. We might have some dips into the high 30s occasionally, but for the most part we should have a pretty decent 40 FPS experience. Alright, let's do a bit of open world exploration now. Still going to be using 40 FPS and 40 Hz with the same settings as before. And as you can see, we are able to hold 40 FPS even in the open world. We are getting some dips into the high 30s, only 2 FPS difference. But as you can see, we will get some dips as well. But it's not too major, doesn't affect the performance too much. Alright, I dropped the resolution down to 1152 by 720. Still medium settings. Now, I did try this game out in the desktop mode, and I could bring it down to 800 by 600. But in the gaming mode, it only lets us go down to 1152 by 720. Now with that preset, our power draw was at 26 watts, so it's not an improvement really. We only saved 2 watts there, which won't give us a lot of playtime. But I went ahead and actually capped the FPS to 30, and I also brought the power limit down to only 12 watts instead of 15. And as you can see, we're only pulling 23 watts right now, so that gives us around 2 hours of playtime. Still not the best, but it's way better than what we had before. Final thing I did is I turned on dynamic resolution in the game settings, and I put an FPS cap of 30 in game as well. And I dropped our power limit down even further to 7 watts. This is basically putting us around 30 FPS maximum. We're going to have some dips into the high 20s, but this is going to the extremes to save battery life pretty much. So it's not for everyone. We are pulling 17 watts, so it's a lot better. But again, you will have more stutters and more FPS dips than what you would have normally. But if you want to save power and play portably, this might be the way to go. Just go try it out, see how it feels. If you like it, then you can use it. If not, then you can just play it normally without the power limit, and it will be a consistent 40/30, depends on what you go with. That's it for the video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, found it useful. If you did, give it a like. And it's up to the channel, I'd highly appreciate it as well. See you next time.